test prep in the time of COVID-19, which sounds like a dramatic title, but this is what we're living with right now. And it's interesting because there's a light at the end of the tunnel that I'm extremely excited about. I mean, just like beyond excited about, to hear the CDC say last week that all Americans will have the ability to get a COVID vaccine by May or June. And that's a quote. That's not any like hypothesizing or hoping. This is what's going to happen. So that's very exciting. And then on the flip side, that we're basically entering the worst period of it so far. So anyway, that's where we are right now. And I err on the healthy side. I err on the sensible side with this stuff, but also I think that when we take care of ourselves, we're taking care of the community. I don't think that anyone ought to take risks that they don't need to take, that they won't benefit from. And you'll see that in this presentation, actually. I mean, the COVID part of this is probably, I don't know, probably 30% of the whole presentation. A lot of it's the normal stuff, which is good. Some of the normal stuff has been affected or limited or restricted by the COVID stuff. But I think we ought to err on the side of safety to protect our friends and family and neighbors. Anyway, one man's perspective. I don't think that's political. It weirdly feels political, which feels really stupid that that's political. But anyway, let's not get into that either. It's funny. I did a rehearsal of this earlier, and I got through the whole presentation really fast. I got through it in like 21 minutes, something really crazy fast. And I was like, I don't think it'll be that fast, but why won't it be that fast? And it's because I do this. It's because I start talking about COVID and friends and neighbors, and there will be other stories yet to come. I hope you like my stories. I will try to keep them to a bare minimum and honestly just get to the good stuff. Speaking of which, let's get to the good stuff. So I'm moving on. Ready? Second slide. What's cooking? What are we doing tonight? What's the agenda? So I'm going to give you an introduction to me. And I hadn't added Uma to this list yet. Sorry, Uma. It should be Ted, Uma, and Tutor Ted. Uma Incroci is my right-hand woman. That's what I've been calling her for a long time. She has no title because basically I do some of the stuff and she does the rest of it. That's how we work, basically. Leslie, I'll get to your question, by the way. So, and by the way, let me just say this. If you guys have questions, by all means, throw them in the chat. I've got a slide at the end that is question answering time. Put them all in there. I'll probably answer some of them along the way, just inadvertently, but then we'll get to, I promise, all of your questions. Well, I can't promise that. I bet we'll get to all of your questions at the end. Okay, cool. So I'm going to close that chat window so I don't even see it. So we're going to start with meeting me and the business. I'll talk about what's different, now under COVID-19. There are changes. I'll make recommendations for your test prep plan. Just basically, it really makes a lot of common sense what we ought to be doing now. There's a couple of unanswered questions, but they're questions we can't answer because the colleges need to answer them for us first. Once they do, then, and we'll know when that's going to happen. It's just not going to happen until after this current admission cycle. So we have to wait till April 2nd or whatever. And then answers to your questions. See, there we go. They're right there. That's it. That's what we're doing. So who is Ted? There's Ted and there's Tutor Ted. And, it's a little confusing because technically I'm both. But Tutor Ted is also an entity, right? In addition. And the greatest thing that any student has ever said about Tutor Ted was one of our tutors, Martha, was working with a kid. And she said, you know what? I'm not sure about this one. Let me ask Ted. And the student said, there's a Ted? Anyway, that kind of blew my mind. I like the idea that that Ted was an idea to this person. Anyway, whatever. This is Ted the person, this guy here. So I've been a test prep tutor since 2000. I was in college when I started doing it. And I had a really great first student who made really big improvements and left me a voicemail. And I was at the Minneapolis airport when I heard it. And the student was emotional in the voicemail. And I was emotional hearing it. And it was like, I was basically hooked. It was like, this is the greatest job ever. So that's when I started. I've been doing it ever since. I was at Princeton at the time, graduated in 2000 from Princeton. I had got a degree in English and with a theater minor. I was a playwright in college, and then went to UCLA for an education degree. So I have a master's in education from UCLA, and specifically within psychological studies within education. Basically, how does the mind work? Why does the mind learn? What are the techniques and tools that the mind uses? And it's just that stuff's so interesting to me. I've always been really good at these tests. This is always the thing. This is the thing that originally got me through the door, you know, and it's a very easy way to get a job. But I got a perfect score on the SAT I took in high school, the old SAT, the 2,400 point version, the ACT, and the SAT subject test in literature and math level 2. I am sitting on a 1590 on the current SAT. I took it one time, and I missed a math question because I didn't read it carefully enough. And here we are, 1590. I can't put that score on the screen, but I need to go in and take it again. You know, but it's just, you know, I'll do it. I'm gonna get that 1600. But you know, those careful reading mistakes, kids, they'll cost you. And above all, I mean, literally above every single thing I do for this company, I believe in non-boring test prep. And I really believe in non-boring everything. Basically, if you're not engaged, what is the point? That's my question. And I think that we can make test prep non-boring all of the time. So that's my goal. I think when we have engagement, we get better results, and that's what we want. So. And then I'm the author of 4 test prep books that are on Amazon. We've written 3 others for the old SAT, but those don't count anymore. You know, they're long gone. They don't count. And then I've also created these SAT and ACT bootcamp courses. So tutorted.com/SAT-boot-camp, tutorted.com/ACT-boot-camp. And I'm just going to pitch these for 1 second, just because I'm really excited about them. These are new classes. They're like totally brand new classes that are based on our books. They're based on how I teach, really. I mean, that's what it is. It's based on me and how I work with my students. And it's encapsulated into this video course that has lessons from me and then topical quizzes that follow that basically test you on the content and what you took away from those lessons. Practice tests. What am I missing? These special strategies from me, like, and you get emails from me all the time. I don't know. It's this cool 4-week class that is as personalized an offering as I can possibly put together for an online course. And I hope that some of you check it out and try it out. I'm super stoked about it. I'm excited for students to get in there and try it and get some feedback and see if they like it. I mean, I hope they do. I think it could be really cool. So that's what I'm excited about right now. Okay. So who is Tutor Ted? I would love to invite Uma. Uma, will you join us? Can you show us your face? Is she there?
For some reason, it's telling me that I can't show my video, but I can say hi.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. So that's Uma Incroci. Uma is, like I said, my right-hand woman, the person who does everything that I don't do, which is a fair amount of stuff. What can you tell the people, Uma? What are the tidbits?
Well, I'll definitely jump in at the end with questions. Basically, we love your personalized questions. We want to make personalized recommendations for you. So if at the end of this, you want to talk to us about, you know, this is where I'm at, I'm trying to decide which test to take or when to take the test, you know, give me a call, send me an email, let's chat. I love to help people out. So I'm here for any questions about the process. And we're also here throughout the whole process. If you do start working with us for test prep, and, you know, we usually end up talking to students and parents for usually like around a year, everything from SAT subject tests to essays to all kinds of stuff. So
right.
Anyway, we'll chat more at the end.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a year is about right. You know, from pre-PSAT through college essays, and you know, we're here and we're always glad to talk. I mean, you'll see that kind of throughout this presentation. This is what we do. You know what I mean? This is what we know. And so, whenever you guys have questions, both during the webinar, but then afterwards as well, by all means, don't hesitate to ask us about it. So that is Uma, and it's a kind of appropriate, Uma, that you didn't have video, because this is now they just know your voice, which is the voice they will. You know,
right, exactly.
Yeah. Here's a little bit more about the business. So we are a test prep tutoring company, primarily tutoring, but we have our books and our online courses too, but specializing in SAT, ACT, IC, SSAT, HSPT, and GRE test prep. The GRE is the new one. A lot of my students have been coming back to me recently and asking for GRE, and it's like, that sounds fun. Let's do some GRE prep. It's a good test, but that's not what we're here for. So let's not talk about that. We have an office in West LA. That's where we give practice tests when it's safe to give practice tests, and we will. We will be giving practice tests at our office again as soon as we can, but not till it's healthy, not till it's safe to do it. We work with students literally around the world on multiple continents and countries, especially via the online tool. I love Zoom. Sorry, I was on, not to be a, this is not arrogant at all, but like not to be arrogant about it, but I was on Zoom before it was cool. I think I started up with it in like 2016, but it's a great tool. It works. We have a lot of dedicated tutors, really great tutors. I have said recently that the tutoring staff we have right now is the best tutoring staff we've ever had. Not that they've ever been bad, but they're just like so good right now. So I'm so excited to send tutors out to students. And the thing that Uma and I both do for every single student who comes in is match them up to a tutor for a reason and figure out, how does this student learn? Who are their favorite teachers? Who would they respond to the best, and then we pair them up, and we do a pretty good job with it. And if we don't get it right, we'll send somebody else out. But it's very fun to do that matching process. And I think that's a big part of what we do. And then it all comes down to this. It all comes down to scores, right? The point of these tests is to get a score, and this is what our students do. Our SAT students improve by an average of 170 points. And ACT scores improve by 5.5 points. And there's, all kinds of, those are averages. So, I've had students come in with a score where, they come in with a 33 on the ACT and they get to a 35 or a 36, and that person improved by 2 or 3 points, but that's still pretty cool. So, I'm really proud of these results. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to compare them against anybody else's improvement results. If they're playing by the rules that we play by, which is basically what's the test before you started, what's the test when you finish. That's it. Like, that's the only comparison we can make. Then I'd be surprised if they can beat us. That's what I would say. But anyway, this is me being like more cocky than I usually am, but whatever. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's get to the meat on the bones here. So COVID-19's impact on SAT and ACT. This is what we've seen so far, and this will kind of point us towards the future too. A lot of the seniors had a hard time taking the SAT or ACT, and some people never took one at all. They did prep and they just couldn't take it, which is too bad. And I felt particularly bad for some students. We had students travel out of state to take the SAT. We had students go to Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona, Indiana. I think those are all the states that where our students went to go take the test. And that's absurd, obviously. Those students were very dedicated and they really needed a score. And the students of mine who did that all improved their scores, and some really significantly. It was just a real burden on everybody. It's more evidence of how kind of ridiculously hard this year has been. A lot of colleges switched to a test optional policy, some for 1 year, some for 3 years, and some forever. Actually, there's some that switched to for 2 years as well. So early on in the quarantine, like April, May, there were all these news stories about, will the SAT or ACT survive pandemic? And Uma had a line that I keep quoting, which is, they're closing down the Hollywood Bowl for the summer too, and no one's asking if the Hollywood Bowl is coming back. So this tells you how people feel about the SAT and ACT. I am not an SAT or ACT apologist. I'm not like, I'm no defender of the test. I'm good at the tests. I like teaching the stuff that's on the test. In fact, I really like the material generally that's on the test. But I don't stand here like defending these tests. That said, they're not going away, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'll show you why. There's very clear reasons and evidence you can look at and say, oh yeah, unless I'm applying to a very, very small set of schools and I don't want to go anywhere else, I'm probably going to need to take these tests, because the colleges just want it. The colleges are the bosses, and they probably want more metrics to measure their students by, their incoming students by. So it is what it is. And then the PSAT dates were canceled or rescheduled in most locations. And I think pretty much everywhere in LA, they were, rescheduled and then canceled, right? They were moved to the October test was able to be moved till January, and that January is way worse than October. So Yeah, I've got more on that too in a little bit on the recommendations. So let's talk about the schools that will be test optional for the class of 2022. So all the juniors, right? This is the expanded list. So there's always been a list. You could always apply to Sarah Lawrence and Bard. Reed has been test optional for a little bit. University of Chicago went test optional recently. This list is bigger now and includes schools that are temporary ones and then potentially becoming permanent ones too. So if this list has all the schools that you dream of going to, and there's not one other school that you want to go to, and by the way, the UCs, of course, the UCs should be on here too. Actually, it's kind of funny. Why did U.S. News and World Report not include the University of California system? Strange. Anyway, if you want to apply to these schools plus the UCs, you're fine. You don't need an SAT or an ACT score. You have my permission to sign up. Although give me one more minute because I'll tell you one more thing about this. Test optional means you don't have to submit a score. If you had a really good score, you'd want to submit it. It would make sense to submit it. So I think the really interesting thing to me here on this list is, well, two things. One is that the big universities are not, right? So basically, the Ivies and Duke and Stanford and MIT, like they're not on there. They're not on that list. Wake Forest is a great school, but there's a pretty big drop off between the University of Chicago and Wake Forest. And I apologize if I just insulted anybody and their college. I love Wake Forest, but it's just a different kind of ballgame in terms of admissions difficulty. But the really interesting thing to me is the right-hand column, which is basically all of the liberal arts schools on the East Coast, all of the, the fancy ones. If that's your dream, if you really want to go to those schools, and if you don't think that you're a standardized test, if it's not sort of harmonious for you and you don't think you can get a score that's going to benefit you, you could apply to those schools and, put together a really good application and get in somewhere like that. So anyway, something to think about. It's weird that I'm selling you on not testing, but I want you guys to be fully informed, right? I'm not going to tell you to take a test if you don't have to take a test. If you do have to take a test, I'm going to tell you how to take that test the best way possible, which we'll get to. Okay, moving on. So here are my recommendations, my COVID proof recommendations. Okay, plan on testing in the late spring. I told you earlier, the CDC said that vaccines will be available for everybody by May or June for all Americans, everybody, okay? Two reasons why that's great. One is you don't have to wear a mask while you're testing. The other thing is you don't have to think about a mask. You don't have to think about the other people in the room, right? I had a student take the February ACT this year, which was post-COVID starting to break out, but pre-shutdown. And he's in the room and there's a kid sitting at a desk, one or two desks away from him, dry coughing through the test, right? That's terrible. That's a really bad way to take the test. Besides that, the cancellation thing has been I wouldn't say a total nightmare. It's been very annoying. It's been very difficult for students. Like I said, we have a student who went to Indiana to take the test. So it's been disruptive. This is why I'm saying, wait till this is over, right? Like, what's the value? To me, the value you'd get of jumping into an early test is completely offset by the value you get of not even having to worry about your test being canceled, right? Like literally at some point, and this is crazy, COVID's going to be a thing of the past. We're not going to be thinking about it. It won't be on our active minds. I can't wait. I can't freaking wait. But we're not there yet. We're still working our way there. So anyway, test in May or June. Maybe April, but I'm kind of more of a May or June guy. Pay attention to what the colleges say about their testing requirements. And this is going to come up specifically around the subject test, the SAT subject test. If I want any test to die, it's those. They're so annoying. They're so stupid, but whatever. I'll get to those later on. They're just really, they're so pointless, but I'll save my rant for later. Okay, this is a really important one. If you are a high scorer, and by high scorer, I mean top 5 percentile, and you're interested in the National Merit Scholarship Program, but you have not been able to take the PSAT, you can use an SAT score as your eligible score. So what you want to do is Google search alternate entry to 2022 National Merit. Those are the words, alternate entry if you searched alternate entry national merit, that would get you there. There's a form. It's not that difficult of a process, but there are dates and deadlines. You have to submit an application to do that by April 1st, and you have to take the test by June. June is the last SAT when you could take that. So anyway, just heads up, you can get a National Merit Scholarship. You can become eligible even if your school never administered the PSAT. That's really important. And that, like I said, that's really only important for, I said top 5, you can stretch it to like top 10, but really it's a very small group who ends up getting that award. So let's say top 6. If you were 94th percentile or higher as a sophomore, then I would encourage you guys to fill out that application. Get ahead of the game, know which tests you're going to take and be ready in advance. There's plenty of time on hand, right? There's more time on hand than there usually is. Let's be ready. And then sign up early. And by early, I mean tonight or next week, or, put it on your calendar and just get it done with, because I don't know how much of a rush there's going to be, but there was a rush this past fall. And there were students we had who were getting ready for a test, and then they went to take it and wanted to try to take it in LA. And some schools were open in LA, but they were full, and if you can't get in, you can't get in. If there's not a seat for you, you can't take the test. So I would just sign up. I would sign up for SAT and or ACT now. It's not free, but it's not that expensive, and you can always move your dates. But I would get those May and June dates going like now. Okay, so now we're to the kind of the more normal stuff. Yay, normal. So how do I choose between SAT and ACT? These are just this is the review of what I'm about to talk about. When should I take the test for the first time? That is COVID affected, obviously. How many times should I plan to take the test? That is also COVID affected. How long does it take to get prepped? Not COVID affected. And what are the SAT subject tests? Boo. Do I need to take them? Hopefully not. We'll get to it. Okay, here we go. So let's start with the tests. What is the SAT? You take the test in 4 sections. 2 of them really contribute to the same section score, but you start with the reading test, then writing and language, which is mostly grammar, then math without a calculator, a shorter section, then math with a calculator, a little bit longer, and then an optional essay. One piece of advice here, I would always write the essay. It's the same sort of thing with the list of colleges. Unless your colleges do not want the essay, and you got your list and the list is finalized, and you can literally say down the line, none of them want the essay, just play it on the safe side. It's at the end. It's going to make your Saturday just a little bit more miserable. And I apologize for that. You're going to survive it. You're going to get through it. I would just write it, because you can't, if you don't take the test, you can't write the essay. So, this is the situation we're in, and you might as well do it. And sorry, I apologize for making you suffer. In total, the SAT is exactly 3 hours, and then 3 hours and 50 minutes with the essay. You get 2 section scores: evidence-based reading and writing, which is way too long of a title, and math. And both sections are scored 200 to 800. You add those up to get a score that's between 400 and 1600. Each of the questions now has 4 multiple choice answers. And then there are also 13 free response math questions where you could generate your own answer, like 3/4 or 0.78 or something like that. And you grid the actual values you want. There's no guessing penalty. So that's the old SAT. That was like, day one stuff. Basically, when do you guess and when do you skip? Now the answer to that question is on both the SAT and the ACT, you never skip. And if you skip, then you've basically thrown away a chance to get a question right. So we guess on everything on both SAT and ACT. The essay score is reported separately, and it's completely separate from the 1600 points. It's graded between 2 through 8. Really, two graders give it a 1, 2, 3, or 4 within 3 domains: reading, analysis, and writing. They add each of those section scores together, and you get 3 scores: a reading score, an analysis score, and a writing score. There's more to talk about there, but not tonight. ACT, also 4 sections, 4 section scores too. English, which is grammar, which is actually the same thing as SAT, writing and language. Math, reading, and science. Okay. And the optional essay. They call theirs a writing test. SAT calls it an essay test. I have a I have a theory about that, but it's actually a stupid theory and it's going to waste time. So I'm not talking about it. Okay. 2 hours and 55 minutes without the essay. So almost the same time frame as the SAT, and then 335 with the essay. Each section gets a score between 1 and 36. The composite score, your overall ACT score, is just the pure average of the 4 section scores. They round up at 0.5. If you get a 32.5, that's a 33. And there are 4 answer choices per question, except on math, there's 5. That's funny. They don't have that. There's no guessing penalty. The optional essay score is reported separately, and the essay is scored in 4 categories from 2 through 12. And then those scores are averaged for your overall score. And again, it's totally like it has nothing to do with the 1 through 36 score. It's just a little bit of trivia on the side. And again, sorry to say, just write it. You know what I mean? I'm actually saving you pain because you might have to go back and write it later, which means you'd have to take the entire test again, which I promise you don't want to do. Okay. So pros and cons of the SAT. SAT pros. And these are pros, but I mean, you can take them how you want, right? The SAT favors strong, patient, analytic readers. Now that's a pro if you're a strong, patient, and analytic reader. If you're not a strong reader, then that probably is a con. But it just rewards a lot of patience, sitting there and grinding through a test that is, it's not dreadful, but it's not terribly interesting. It's not going to surprise you or entertain you at any point. It's much more likely to, it won't piss you off either. It just takes a lot of analysis, and that takes some energy. So if that's your style, and if you can kind of like do that work consistently, then you'll love, especially the reading section. The math content on the SAT is very focused. It's very, it's algebra. There's a little bit of like statistical stuff. It's not too hard. The tiniest bit of shape geometry, a lot of word problems, especially on the longer math section. It's a lot of like reading to make sure you're actually extracting the right content to give the right answer. And there's no science test. This is a pro that most people are pretty excited about, that there is no science section on the SAT, though they actually do include graphs on the reading section and on the writing and language section, which is kind of funny. Not always in the writing and language, but they sneak in there. So they have this little, kind of minority cluster of graph questions, which is what ACT science is. The cons of SAT are it has a very narrow range of skills and abilities. So like this is kind of my beef more than anybody else's, but it doesn't reward any creative thinking. It rewards very like focused analytical thinking. I mean, I've used that word about 9 times on this slide, but that's what it is. It's interpretation, it's extracting evidence, it's close reading. It's a lot of stuff that you'll do in college. It's just not it's not a beautiful test, It's a hard test, but it's not a beautiful test. So if you have these skills, then you'll be fine on it. This is an interesting one. With the reading section especially, it really relies on subtle clues. All the answers are always justifiable. And I would say in general, and this is not even an opinion, it's just true. The SAT question by question is harder than the ACT, no doubt about it. The things that make it harder are that there are really subtle clues that you have to find one word in the passage and one word in the answer choice and kind of pair those up and be like, that's why that answer is right. You have to make sure that every word in the answer choice is justified by the passage. And those, when they want to make it hard, they do a really good job. And I've said this to people before, but when I've had students come out of the SAT, it's so interesting. This is so consistent too. When they come out of the SAT and they're like, and I'm like, how did it go? Some of them say, yeah, it was pretty good. I felt pretty good about it. Other students will come out of the reading section of the entire test, but specifically about the reading section and be like, I don't know. It was really hard. I don't know how I did. Which group did better? By a mile, the second group, because that's the kind of work you have to do. You've got to find those subtle clues. And even when you find them, it doesn't feel that good. You know what I mean? Because you're just making these really tough judgment calls and straying away from an answer choice that sounds more tempting and more correct. But but it does something that's a little bit off. And this other one that's subtle and seems to say very little will be right. So it takes that kind of patience and that like stamina, you know what I mean? And like emotional vitality seriously to answer that many subtle questions correctly. It's hard. This is a con, but it's really a pro. It's both. Prepping requires building fundamental skills. And what I mean by that most specifically would be, well, there's a couple things, but most specifically, reading. Reading archaic passages, being able to read something from the 18th century, 19th century, and put it together. You'll never read those like you're a member of the 18th century, right? Like that's not how it's probably going to work. And maybe some people in the world are like that, but it's probably not going to happen right now for the SAT. But you get a lot better at it. You can get a lot better. You can build your vocabulary. You can understand weirder sentence structures, and these can become a lot easier. But that's part of the work. There are other things that are a lot easier to get better at. The grammar stuff's really, that was a gift from the SAT that they gave us, that writing section, writing and language. But this other stuff is hard. And the other thing that you need to know sort of, fluently in a fundamental way is the equation of a line and a quadratic equation. You have to know everything about them, how they work, why they work, what they do, what every piece of the equation does and why. And it's not that much stuff. That goes back to that very focused math content, right? That it's like, if I needed to, I could teach all of this stuff to you guys in, an hour, maybe a little bit less. And if you had, if we all had perfect memories, then we'd have it down. But anyway, this is what this test is about. Okay. ACT pros and cons. By the way, I'm going to get through this presentation within an hour. That's my own, I was talking about timing earlier. This is my only goal is like, I'm going to finish this thing within 60 minutes. Cause that's my, whatever, that's my arbitrary marker, but just so you know, so this is not interminable, I will finish by 7 PM. So long as I stop talking about that stuff. ACT pros. This test is totally predictable. We know everything that's going to be on it, and it's hilariously it's so freaking consistent, which means it's totally coachable. And one other pro for some people, it depends on which student you are, is that only 1/4 of the score is math, right? So if math is not a strong suit, if you're not excited about that, on the other test, it's 50%. On this one, it's 25%. I shouldn't use math to explain that, but I did, and I can't take it back. ACT cons. Well, another 1/4 of the test is science. So that's the bad news. I happen to love the ACT science test, and I'll get to why in a second. It'll be one of these other points, but this is a big one. The speed can be really intense on that test. You've just got to be ready to go and go quickly. Let me get to this point because this is the point. ACT is not built like a test that you take in school. The English and the math, which are the first two sections, are a lot more like a test you take in school because they're content based. And if you know the stuff, then you just show that you know the stuff, and there's not a lot of mystery there. The reading and the science are weird, and they're just very specific, and you have to do them the ACT's way. So I would say maybe 10 to 15% of students, they pick up the ACT, they get the speed, they understand the kind of the nature, the joke behind the reading and the science, and they just do it right away, no problem. Other students take a little bit more adjusting, and they basically have to understand that it's not like school tests, and then therefore change their approach. Totally doable, It's just a weird thing to have to do. It's a weird thing to be like, oh, this isn't a normal test. I shouldn't do it the way I do it in school. And there's a lot more behind that, but these are the pros and cons. So how to choose? This is the big one. This is the number one question you should ask when you get started. And we love helping with this question. This is, an area of expertise for us, obviously, hopefully. So the first place to start would be scores from practice tests. And we'll talk more about that too. Student strengths, so including their speed and their reading level. I always ask my students when they come in, when you're in class, when do you finish a test relative to your peers? Do you finish in the first third, the middle third, to the back third? If they're finishing at the end of the test on every test with all of their, in all of their subjects, that's a strike against the ACT. If their reading level isn't that high, if they're not great readers, that's a strike against the SAT, just because these passages are hard. I didn't do this because it would be mean, but I should bring one of these reading passages into these into the presentation and show you. It's like, yeah, that's crazy hard. This takes a practiced reader who's on point that day. So these are the factors we consider. I think the student's preference is important. I'm always willing to talk them in and out of things, especially around the ACT science, because for the 85% of people for whom that test is not natural, a lot of them can get it, and I can show them how to get it, and you can make major strides that way. So like, just the fact that you don't like the science the first time you do it is not the reason you shouldn't take the ACT necessarily. You know what I mean? Like it's possible. It's possible you shouldn't take the ACT, but it being a foreign test is not a good enough reason, because it is a foreign test. And then the last factor is a diagnostic report. We use this company called Mindprint to do our diagnostic reports, and they're really cool. They're really terrific. They give you executive function broken down by category. They give you your analytical skills broken out by category, and it's pretty neat. It's a pretty effective tool, and we are happy to give them to our incoming students, because it's good for you. Totally. It's good for you understanding yourself as a student better. It's great for us. We can see who a student is on the way in, and it's just, I don't know, it's a time saver, and it's fun information to have too. So anyway, and then how to decide, once you have that information, what do you do to make the decision? So talk to us, this is what we do. Contact@tutorted.com. There's the phone number. Schedule a Mindprint diagnostic exam with us. So, call us up and ask us, hey, can I do that diagnostic test? So that one, by the way, that test is going to give you it's going to give you those narrative factors, the ones that underlie the tests, the nature of the tests. So we'll use that and then say, okay, here's how that plays out on the test. And here's what you might respond to. And here's what you might not respond to on the test. So that's what we do with that information. Then discuss it with us, talk. Use the scores, the diagnostic report, your own insight, and our feedback to pick a test, and put it all together, and we'll land on something. And for some students, it's like, hey, you know what? You're going to get a great score on either test. For other students, it's really clear they should take one test or the other. And I think we've done a pretty good job of helping students figure that out. Okay. So this is the schedule upcoming. This is like a very boring slide most years. It's not as boring now. It's not boring at all. It's actually really interesting. I did some drawing on this. Let's see if the drawing works. Ready? Okay, there you go. You're not taking the February ACT. I'm sorry. Don't take the February ACT. It does not make sense. It really just there's no value. There's no reward to taking that test. If you were taking it in like your own sealed compartment and there were no one else in there, great. If you can pull that off, let me know where. If you're in a classroom with other students, it just doesn't make sense. I know that high school students are not going to suffer from that illness, but they can spread that illness, and we need to just right now we got to contain this thing. I'm not a big fan of the March SAT. That feels early too. All y'all are healthy, which means, and me too, that we're all going to get the vaccine late, and you got to get 2 doses of it. So I think March 13th is probably a little bit early. So that leaves us with these other dates. I put a question mark next to the April ACT, but these are the winners right here, right? Plan on taking one of these tests, because we're all going to be healthy by the time these test dates roll around, right? So I'm a fan of people taking tests. I'm a fan of people maintaining their sanity and not having to worry about test centers closing. It was maddening. It was so annoying. And I'm sure Uma is nodding her head right now. We would have tests canceled on, Friday, the day before the test, or Thursday or Tuesday. You know what I mean? You'd be planning, you'd be ready to go, and then it just wouldn't happen. So let's take the test when we can actually take the test. That's what Tutor recommends. How many times? Well, the old rule of thumb was take a maximum of 3. This year, you're probably going to take 2. That's fine. Take one in the spring. Take one at the end of the school year. Okay, and we're going to get to this in a second. Don't take the test until you're ready, and you've got plenty of time to get ready this year, because we're not rushing into this. And then, unless you have the score you need, take the test in the fall of senior year. So what's funny about this slide right now, all the parentheticals I added for this presentation, right? All the rules before that have been here the entire time, because they're good rules. They're like really sensible rules. And the last one is the one I really want to draw your attention to. Take the test in the fall of senior year. I had students who went to all these states, who like traveled out of state, were in an unfamiliar environment, and they all got their best score, and so not only the unfamiliar environment, also under, COVID protocols, basically. So people got better scores for so many reasons. One is they had the experience of having taken the test before. And a big one for me is they were older. These tests get easier as you get older. So I can't recommend taking the test in fall of the senior year more highly. It's just, it works. I'm telling you, it works. Cool. A good test prep plan. So prep consists of learning and practice, right? You learn the content, you learn the strategies, you put them into play, and you keep doing that. You know what I mean? And some people pick it up the first time, some people pick it up the second time, and then the third time. And it takes work and exercise and actual, putting it onto an actual exam. We have this huge collection of every released actual exam, and like a shocking number of released exams because of the value of practice. So this is what we do. This is how you get better. A ballpark test prep plan. And I say ballpark because this is the one size fits all version. It's not the right test prep plan for everybody. We'll be happy to discuss your particular needs with you. For some people, it's going to be less test prep. For some people, it's going to be more. This is the sort of sweet spot. 3 months of prep is about the right window. That's the over under for amount of time, with 4 practice tests along the way. I personally would actually say do more practice tests, but I also understand that you are busy people and you can't do, the time is limited to some extent. So this is the sort of like sweet spot. You're going to be ready for the test if you do it this way. Our number one goal is confidence. And that sounds kind of like aspirational or abstract, you know what I mean? What does confidence mean? But what I mean is you've got confidence in your knowledge, what's going to be on the test, and you're confident in your approach to the test, right? When you sit down, I mean, this is literally the goal. I want my student to sit down with the test booklet and open it up and be like, yes, I know what's going on, and just do it. Just do their thing, right? It's like, that's what confidence is. It's not blustery, and it's not arrogant, and it's not false. It's just, what's going on and you can deliver. So that's my goal for my students. And that's what I think that's what we get them to, I think that's where we get them. I think this is why they improve, but whatever. And then also, and this is kind of interesting, I recommend you target your weak areas. Everyone wants to do that. Everyone's like, I'm not as good at math, so I need to go after that section. But I promise you, do not neglect the strong ones, because weirdly, because you're good at something, you might actually be able to boost it more easily. And in fact, based on the curves of the test, it takes fewer additional items correct to improve your score more than if you were in the middle of the curve, right? So if you're at a 700 on, reading on the SAT, getting to 800 is a lot easier than going from 500 to 600. From 500 to 600, you're against this huge block of people. 700 to 800, there's a much smaller group of people and many fewer items. So anyway, just don't neglect your strengths. You can actually, a score improvement counts there too. If you improve your score by 50 points there, it's the same as improving by 50 points on your weaker section. Okay. Do you need a test prep tutor? Of course, you'd expect me to say yes, because I am a test prep tutor, right? So do you need me? No, but this is the actual explanation. You need a test prep professional as much, and for the same reasons, as you need a personal trainer, right? You want to get in shape. If you can get up in the morning at 6 a.m. and go for a run every day, and lift weights, or put a program into play, or even come up with the program you want to put into play, and then do it for yourself, you don't need a trainer, right? It's the same thing with test prep, and you could do something that's not as intense as, say, working with a tutor. If you could do the boot camp course, right? If you can do that, that takes like the tiniest bit more self-motivation. You've got to find the time for yourself. It's scheduled by week, but you still need to sit down and do it. Then yeah, you don't need a tutor. But if it's better, and it is for me, to have someone kick your butt and basically say, not just kick your butt, but also show up every week and give you homework and basically say, hey, I'm coming back next week. I want to see, let's work on this topic and let's see if we can improve that. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to work on that stuff. One of the things I discovered during my education grad school time at UCLA was that tutoring is literally, without exception, in every study ever conducted, the most successful method of teaching. And it makes sense, like it's a person who sits next to you and sees what you know and moves you from exactly where you are to the next step. And then from that step to the next step, right? It's just like it makes common sense. It does work. You can also do it on your own. It just takes some extra like drive, basically, a little bit of knowledge. I mean, you're getting some of that knowledge right now. There's knowledge out there on the web. I'm literally not going to sell you guys anything you don't need. But if you want a personal trainer, we've got some kick-ass personal trainers. What are subject tests? Do I need to take them? I think my feelings have gotten stronger about the SAT subject test. They're just so stupid. They've been so stupid for so long. But anyway, these are these 1 hour curriculum-based tests in math, literature, history, science, foreign language. There's probably like 20 or so of them. And they're scored 200, 800 each one. At this point, and this is good, this is where the news is trending positively. No U.S. colleges require them. Randomly, McGill in Montreal does. Thanks a lot, McGill. I sent a student to McGill one time, actually. Some schools recommend them. We don't like that word because recommend means take them. Many consider them. If you can get good scores on them, you should probably take them. You want to take the ones that line up with the courses that you've taken, right? You've taken AP US History, take the US History test. It's like a junior varsity version of the AP test. Here's my beef. Here's my issue, my problem, and I'll try to keep it short. I will keep it short. My beef is that not one course taught in the United States is aimed at the SAT subject tests, nor should it be. So we're taking a test that is like completely artificial and out of the blue. And it just feels like a waste of time to me, right? We've got these other standardized tests. They're given on the same day as the SAT, which means you need to kind of schedule, figure that part out. And it just feels really unnecessary to me. These tests, by the way, they still have a wrong answer penalty because they haven't been updated. And the SAT stands behind the fact that they got rid of the wrong answer penalty, and then they still have one for the subject test. It's so dumb. Okay, I'm cutting myself off. It's a chance to demonstrate your mastery of the subject. That's a good thing. If you want to take them, if you have to take them, take practice tests in March or early April, just on your own. You know what I mean? This is like, grab a test, set aside an hour, do it. We'll score it. We'll see where you're at. And, we use those scores as sort of a starting point and say, okay, great. You're at 650. Let's set a goal of getting above 750 on that test. Okay, great. You got a 340. You know what? Let's pick a different test. Anyway, that's the plan. Don't worry about these things till March. Okay. Oh, yeah, we're at questions already. Look at my little shruggy guy. I threw him in today because I was so excited because I just love that emoji character so much. It's hard for me to explain why I like him so much. He's just so funny. He's so funny. So it's question time. I'm going to look at my chat window. Here we go. All right. Going to the top, ignoring the ones below. So Leslie says, do you think UCs will go test blind for fall 2022 due to the current court case for inequality for testing as well as the COVID issues? So the UCs have a long-term plan already in place, which is a 5-year plan to actually switch over to their own test. In the first 2 years, they're supposed to be test optional, but I think that might now just be that they're not accepting tests at all. In the 3rd and 4th year, they were not going to accept any tests whatsoever, and in the 5th year, they were going to accept their own test. I've got some bad news for them, which is that they think the SAT is a racist test. Once they release their own test, they'll realize that their test is also a racist test because tests are not really racist. Tests are classist. Tests reward students who've gotten a really good education and they penalize students who haven't. And there's a very wide gap, especially in the state of California, you can see that I have seen with my own eyes between the quality of education, the number of students in the classroom, the number of students who can literally are able to sit facing forward in a classroom. Like that's a factor in California. If you don't have that, if you're in a 45 student class, then you're not learning how to read really well, and you're not going to do well on the test. And then the UCs look at that and say, oh, you see, Latino students are doing worse. It's like, no, it's not Latino students who are doing worse. It's students who don't have access to good resources. So anyway, that's my minor rant on that. The UCs, you're not going to need an SAT or an ACT score for the UCs. Yeah. Hannah says, what if someone gets a bad score on the essay? Can they only send in your multiple choice? You do have to send the essay. I'm sorry about that. I think the colleges know that I know the colleges know that the essay scores are dubious at best. You want to prep for the essay, you know, I mean, you want to do enough to make sure you hit the mark and basically like hit the rubric. If a student were writing a really bad essay, you know, if basically we got to the end of the practice and it was like, yeah, this is not good enough, then you could call it off and you could say, yeah, this is going to detract from the rest of the test. It's not that hard, you know, if you've got a decent grasp of English, it's, you know, and a couple of ideas in your head and a plan, most importantly, a plan, and you follow that plan, there shouldn't be a lot of surprises on the essay. I do get what you're saying, Hannah, and that like we do have to, you know, we are going to, they will see that score, but I don't know. I haven't ever seen that bad of an essay score, you know. If you think about it with the SAT, each grader is giving it a score from 1, 2, 3, or 4. And a 4 is the very best essay they've ever seen. And a 1 is the very worst essay they've ever seen. And the difference between those is so monumental. So I think like the very worst case scenario is you had a bad day and a bunch of people gave you 2s, you know, and that's not what you want, obviously. But it's not that bad either. You know, like you haven't fallen into like the pit of despair or anything. So I don't think the scores actually get that bad. And I would recommend trying to write that thing. You know, with a plan, you'll be fine. Becky says, regarding the optional essays, as a high school counselor, I would have agreed with you that I used to recommend that my students just do it. Yeah, that's right. You know, this is a good point. However, there are now only 3 colleges that require it pre-COVID: West Point, Martin Luther, and University of Western Montana. God bless the University of Western Montana. I'm not laughing at it. It's just like so specific. Knowing that, I now tell my students not to write the essay. Would you agree? Yeah, it's funny. I had that thought, you know, and like I for so many years have been thinking, yeah, write the essay just because you might as well. I know who was it that dropped it? Like Yale dropped it entirely. Yale doesn't want the essay anymore. So yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point, Becky. I need to reevaluate. I don't want to give that answer tonight. I'm going to email you guys tomorrow with a link to the video and whatever else, links to other fun stuff tomorrow. I'm going to answer that question tomorrow once I feel really, really, really good at my answer. So I'm writing it down on my little to-do list. Answer ? About essay. Yeah, it's a good question. Rada says, how much does the diagnostic test and the mind print cost? Guess what? Nothing. Now we do it for free because it's really valuable to us to get those results. We do a diagnostic session with me, which is like at my tutoring rate, but the session that's the first time you'd pay for anything. We're happy to give you the diagnostic tests and the mind print and use that to pair you off with a tutor. You know what I mean? If we can use that to make a really good match, then it's you know worth it to us to make that investment. So yeah, the cost is $0. Uma, what does Uma say? I'm guessing SAT and ACT will add more dates to 2021, especially if any of the spring tests get canceled. You know, an interesting one was that, and it's probably true, but SAT had thought about doing a January test, and then they canceled it. They just decided not to do it. So, yeah, it's if they need the capacity, they will. ACT did an interesting thing, which is, do I have time for this? Quick story. Julia, that's a great question. Oof, fun. Okay, I'll try to keep this short. SAT and ACT have their local test administrators at schools, not employed by the, you know, I mean, they're paid by SAT or ACT, but they're not like in-house employees, right? They couldn't control those people canceling the tests. So ACT started administering their own tests. And so there are like these special ACT, you know, at a hotel tests. And this is like, it's a little gross to me, honestly, because it's like, it's so competitive and so like not focused on the student's health. But anyway, that's the way it was going. In December this month, and it was a bad idea. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Every ACT and SAT has been canceled since March of last year. May dates are impossible. After AP test in June is finals week. Here's what I would say, Leslie. You're not going to take it twice in the spring. You shouldn't try to take it twice in the spring. You should take it once in the spring and once in the fall. I know about the AP test thing. I've had students do well on that test anyway, and in part because it's like just one more test. You know what I mean? Like they're in the zone, in the mood anyway. June, it's a tough ask of kids but I think it's a tougher ask to put them in a room with a mask and the threat of disease. You know what I mean? It's just, we ask a lot of our juniors, that is a freaking fact. And you might even say we ask too much of them, but from my perspective, it's like, we've got to wait till May or June, maybe April, but I don't know. That's one man's overcautious perspective. And then the second time, you're going to take it in September or October, and you're going to take that test because that's when you're going to kick the test's butt. So Julia says, any free hints for the science and reading sections? And the answer to that is yes. Obviously, I'm 3 minutes away from my arbitrary deadline here. What I would say is I've done this science webinar. There's a recording of it on YouTube. It's called ACT Science is Not That Bad, I think it is. But if you search Tutor TED ACT Science, you'll find it. That's a pretty cool resource. And I do it. I like to do it live, and I'll do it again before the next ACT that actually happens, which is not February. Probably before the April ACT, I'll do it again. So yes, the reading one, I was actually working on a reading presentation too. The number one thing I would say for ACT reading in particular, and this is again going back to the fact that this is not a school test, you know what I mean? That it's different than a school test, and so you have to do it differently. Is answer the questions as soon as you see the answer that you think is right. Right. So like basically take second guessing off the table. If you want to, you can put a star next to a question and you can come back to it at the end of the section. And that's great. You can do that if you have the time. Right. Other than that, you should answer them, and you should. Oh, nice. Thanks, Uma. And you should just hustle on through. You know what I mean? Like literally what I do, I read question 11. Answer choice A is exactly what I thought it was. That's the right answer. I don't read B, C, and D. I pick A and I move on. And like, that's a crazy thing to do on a school test. This is not a school test. Hi, Bree. Yes. Okay. What a great segue. And Uma, I'll get to your hypothetical question too. Shoot. I've got so many things to say. I got to go in sequence. This is my OCD brain. I'm going to do Uma first, and then Bree, I'm coming back to you. I promise. If you have a full spring of AP tests, can you wait till August or September of senior year to take the test for the first time? Here's the recommendation why I would say don't do that, or take the July or August test as your first test and then have September or October to back that up. So you could do July ACT, which is after, school's out, and then September ACT to back that one up, or August SAT, October SAT. That'd be a fine plan. Here's the reason you want to take two tests. You get better. You literally get better. You've had the experience. You go to the same test center. You have, you literally just do it a second time. And guess what happens with practice? You get better. So please try to make time for two tests. And I'm saying that, I'm not saying that to sell you more test prep. I'm saying that because you're going to get a better score. Bree says, I hope to have another reading class soon. And the answer is to that, which is not actually a question, is we are going to do a reading class. It's going to be on Sunday, December 27th at 3 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to read 4 short stories, all holiday themed. And they're really good. And it's about 15,000 words, I think, total, right around that. So it's like a good amount of reading, but not a crazy amount. And I will send you guys an email with that link to sign up for that. But it's free and it's fun. It's basically like, let's have a good time and read some stuff together. I know. I'm actually really excited too. I'm like, I picked out the stories and I was just pumped. pumped. And like Willa Cather's in there, and obviously you know how I feel about Willa Cather. So Willa Cather, one of America's greatest writers. There, I said it. Top three, you know, top one. Melville's probably number one, but she's up there. Okay, let me close this thing out here real quick. So next steps. That phone number, that's the secret sauce, basically. You know, ask us a question. Contact us, get your practice test, get your diagnostic evaluation, your mind print set up, and then we'll, you know, work from there. And you'll reach Uma, by the way. Oh, Rosie has her hand up. Rosie, Rosie, can you ask a question in the chat window? Would that be all right? So basically go to your kind of more options and hunt for chat, and then see if you can type the question in there. I'll get to that. I'm gonna keep going through these next steps, but if you have one, Rosie, I'll be happy to answer it. Yeah, reach out to us. So this is the bootcamp link. These are the bootcamp links that I'm super into right now. tutorted.com/ACT-boot-camp. Same thing with SAT-boot-camp. Check them out. You know, I mean, I've got sample lessons up on there, and you can see if you like it. And if you like it, great. And if you don't like it, also great. That's fine too. But it's just this really, okay, cool. Thanks, Rosie. It's just a really efficient way to do your test prep, like hyper efficient. In fact, I think my next point is something kind of fun here. Yes. If you use the promo code HUNDO, you'll get $100 off that course. So it's the retail price on the boot camps is $395. The HUNDO code gets you $100 off. So it's literally a complete test prep package for $295, which is, I don't know. I like it. I'm a fan of it. You know, I made it, so I'm biased. But yeah, that seems to me like a pretty good deal. The last thing here is just call us. You know, you guys heard Uma's voice. Uma's a very, very pleasant person to talk to on the phone. I say that because I talk to her on the phone a lot. I also see her too when her camera is available. But that's it. That's it for me for tonight. 7:03. I've got a taco salad out there waiting for me, which is great. Really exciting for me. Turkey taco salad. Anyway. Oh, nice. Oh, that's cool. So let me read Leslie's point here. I think you should point everyone to your podcast with College Essay Guy for an extra 2 points on ACT because it was so good and so helpful. This one is really helpful for all sections. Thank you for so much for putting this up. Free information and tips. Oh, well, now you're gonna make me blush. Don't do that. Oh, geez. It's not you. No, that's not fair. You're not allowed to make me like, you're not allowed to make me emotional. That's not okay. Well, okay. A little bit, just a little bit. That's awesome. Thank you guys. I'm so glad that the podcast, and that episode in particular has landed well. So he did one, I did one with him and he did one with me. So I'm on his podcast, College Essay Guy, and he's on mine, which I think is tutorted.com/podcast. But check it out. So it's, yeah, he's a good dude. I like Ethan. Anyway, thanks for saying nice things. And the trip around the country was, I would describe that as life-changing in a good way. So, and there's obviously a lot more behind that, but it was a good time. It was really interesting. Thank you all. Thank you so much for your attention and energy. And honestly, thanks to all of us for weathering this freaking storm this year. I mean, it's been gnarly and like it's not over yet, which is the bad news, but we're getting there. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We're getting there. You know, this thing, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to get there. And just, I don't know, plan sensibly around that, right? It's like, let's all stay healthy until then. So I wish you guys a really happy holiday season and that you stay healthy and sane and that we all get into 2021 ready to weather the storm for a few more months. And that's it. And I'll email you tomorrow with the recording. Thanks, guys.